So, like Dr. Young said, our topic was privacy and technology. So, due to the recent rise of technology, with the invention of the internet, social networks, cell phone usage, privacy has become a much more complex issue. There's a lot more facets that we have to consider. It was a much easier idea to grasp before. You had to basically have like physical copies of documents or information. Much harder to give to other people without being caught. Things like that. Hacking now is prevalent. There's things like that we have to consider. So the world of information essentially lies at our fingertips. And because of that, our social and professional lives depend upon it, using credit card accounts, internet, social networks, LinkedIn, professional profiles online, things like that. So this begs the question, how has privacy changed? So, and also, how are we going to conform to this new reality? And how are we doing so far? So we'll be analyzing the situation through these three stakeholders, which are government, businesses, and consumers, which is us. And so, from the perspective of these stakeholders, we find that current policies in place regarding privacy are ineffective and do not adequately protect sensitive information or general privacy, and must be changed by the government. So the first stakeholder worldview is the government. Relying on the government to protect your privacy is like asking a peeping Tom to install your window lens. So that's a quote by John Perry Barlow, who's a fellow at the Berkman Center for Internet and Society at Harvard Law School. And if anybody's a rock fan, he was also a lyricist for the Grateful Dead. But this quote pretty much embodies what the public seems to think today in terms of privacy. Frequently people are reminded of identity theft risks and how easy it is to steal information, how at risk you are from hackers and things like that. In the past month, I've actually heard something like thieves can actually scan your credit card depending on what kind you have. They can do it through wallets or purses. Apparently, if you have something called a PayPass or a Blink credit card, you have a radio frequency identification system in your credit card. They can scan it, even in their pockets. So essentially, they can steal all your information in a split second. You would never know who it is. And that's only with like new credit cards and things like that. So for future reference, if you have one of those and you're afraid that might happen, just put some foil on a credit card. You'll be fine. But it sounds pretty scary, right? How on earth are you supposed to protect from things like that? You would never know. And that's exactly the question the government has trouble answering. How are you supposed to protect from that? And so technology has created a new frontier of theft and infiltration and expanding the world in meaning of privacy. And if it was a simpler concept, it definitely isn't one now. So what I'm going to bring up now is not just the issue here. There's two issues here, sorry for that. There's privacy and security. The problem is that most people roll both of these up into one thing. And we have to differentiate between the two. And the people think that it's the same thing can be dealt with. Policies can deal with these same two things. It's not the case. And so when you think about it, privacy affects how security's actions and options can be used, where security dictates which privacy choices should be implemented. To make that clear, current privacy policies determine what security measures should be taken in the event of infiltration. And security measures determine what privacy policies should be newly implemented. Of course, the government is still figuring this out, and so we have to give them some time in terms of that. There's so many, like I said, there's so many thousands of facets in the issues that it's very difficult to keep up with it. So another thing we're going to consider is cybersecurity. So at this time, it seems to be the most challenging front. The government has an increasingly difficult time balancing transparency and protection of privacy rights. On the one hand, the public seems to want transparency in terms of government organizations. They want to know what they're doing, how they're operating, how they're functioning. But at the same time, they want protection. They want privacy rights and things like that on networks, internet, and cell phone usage. This is especially important after the NSA scandal and with the whole Edward Snowden thing. A lot of people seem to be in uproar about that. So the focus can't be on those two things at the same time, unfortunately. It's very difficult to prioritize. And not only that, but we have insufficient resources. We don't have enough people who are focusing on both issues. What it needs is time, like I said before. I can't stress enough how quick things have changed. It's in the past few decades, the internet's come up. It was so recent, and now we have so many things that depend on it. It's insane if you think about it. And regulating it is an even more difficult thing to do. So, from the government standpoint, it's actually very hard to keep up with it. And so one measure the government has done, which was actually more than a decade ago, in order to try and regulate it, is the U.S. Patriot Act. And so the Department of Treasury states that the purpose of the Patriot Act is to deter and punish terrorist acts in the U.S. and around the world, to enhance law enforcement and investigatory tools and other purposes. The problem with the Patriot Act is that it allows the government to access all info on every database. And essentially it does not allow for anybody to object to that, and nobody is safe from that infiltration of information. If the government at all suspects you of suspicious activity or even of terrorist acts, they are able to go into any database available, which means cell phone usage, any accounts from any businesses, and use that information to try and prosecute you. And you are not allowed to object to that. The problem is that this measure seems pretty extreme, and it definitely is so. It kind of goes through, everybody argues that it kind of glosses over the right to privacy in the Constitution. But the US usually has to balance between national security and privacy, and this is just one example of what they're trying to do. And while it isn't the best policy, I think it's definitely a start in the right direction. So with some reforming, this could be a very effective measure. Fortunately, while this is an extreme thing, there are things that could be better on the international front. So the United Nations recognized the importance of privacy when it declared privacy a fundamental human right in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. So due to the creation of the internet, this is more difficult to defend. But Ariel E. Wade has proposed an international personal data privacy treaty. It's actually based on the European Union's Personal Data Privacy Directive. And the directive protects privacy rights while promoting the free flow of information. It has specific criteria for legitimate data processing and has provisions such as the data subject's right to access the data, the data subject's right to object to the access of data, and confidentiality and security of processing. So this is essentially deals with all the problems that we complain about. We want to know what is being looked at in terms of our information. We want to make sure that people are getting this information through the right means. And so if we are able to come up with this treaty and sort of conform it to our system, it would definitely solve a lot of problems. It's very different from what's allowed in the US because, like I said before, we balance national security and privacy. But if we were to sort of change our interests, hopefully for the better, this would definitely create a better change. Of course, these stricter regulations will have a bad effect on the government because, like we said, we want transparency, but we wouldn't be able to use information of our citizens. So it's a balance. And this affects governments and businesses negatively, but consumers positively. So I've already stated how it affects governments, but I'm going to let Elizabeth talk about how it affects businesses.
Regarding businesses, the use of censorship and privacy matters should be regulated in order to protect the privacy of the employees. Now, when dealing with privacy and censorship in businesses, basic ethics are important to consider. According to Maureen Kilcullen and others in the article, at least do no harm, business ethics can be defined as a set of principles that guides business practices to reflect a concern for society as a whole while pursuing profits. Kilcullen later in the article goes on explaining, central to understanding CSR or corporate social responsibility is that a corporation is defined as an entity created and empowered by a state charter to act as an individual. This authorization gives a corporation the right to own, buy, and sell property, to enter into contracts, to sue and be sued, and to have legal accountability for damages and debt, only to the limit of the stockholder's investment. So essentially, businesses, although they are held to a certain standard, are in control of how they regulate censorship and how they monitor their employees both inside and outside of the office.
When you're at work on a computer, you might think that what you're doing is actually private. Well, you might want to think again. There's a pretty good chance your boss is eavesdropping on everything you do. Channel 4's Gordon Tokamatsu.
I think their bosses are paying much attention to office website and email.
I think maybe we're too big to maybe even have that type of snooping going on.
Information on privacy
If you send or receive emails, don't count on anything being There's a greater chance than ever before that your boss is monitoring everything you do. You won't believe how easy it has become. Privacy, something most of us cherish, of course, but in this world where the computer is king, is privacy in the workplace becoming a thing of the past?
I'm sure the capability is out there, but I don't think that it's a daily routine practice.
A recent NBC4 poll shows most workers don't think their bosses are paying much attention to office web surfing and email.
I think maybe we're too big to maybe even have that type of snooping going on.
Maybe, but that doesn't mean your employer agrees. In fact, bosses are not only considering it, they're doing it. Nick Roxborough is an attorney who specializes in workplace rights.
People can call in from home, log onto the network, get onto your computer, and in the backyard read all your personal mail, and you never know it.
Not to say that on-the-job eavesdropping is happening to every employee every minute, but new technologies made it so easy to snoop that even the most careful worker could feel like someone is watching. Let's say you sit down at your computer at work and decide to go surfing on the internet.
Okay, so this video is clearly dated, and then you also have computers. But it goes to show that even without the new technology that we have today, social media sites, employers found ways to monitor their employees even though they didn't know it. And the same thing still happens today. Software such as SpectreSoft is used to record employee internet uses for businesses. According to Ariana Levinson, toward a cohesive interpretation of the Electronic Communications Privacy Act, the co-founder of the SpectreSoft producing company stated that the software is designed to make it easier for parents to monitor their children's internet use and for employers to monitor their employees' internet use. The software virtually captures all instant messages, sent and received emails, web searches, online chats, file transfers, electronic data, and other activity from the computer. These kinds of softwares can be used without the knowledge of those being monitored, and as technology progresses, it only gets worse. Levinson explains, as technology advances, it creates novel work practices and problems. Technology permits a boundaryless workplace in which employees work during non-work hours and while at home. She continues on saying, as for employers, the technology provides more ability to monitor employees' communications made both at work and away from work. Especially today with social media sites such as Facebook and Twitter, people are called to regulate what they put on the internet. I know I've always been told, and you all have probably been told not to put anything incriminating online, like pictures or statements, because current or future employers could potentially see them. And according to Cody Ammerman, a human resource employee for PETA, we always investigate those who we are interested in hiring. We go through Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, everything. If there's anything we find that goes against what we stand for, they're automatically eliminated. And according to these rules, discretion is key when deciding what to put on the internet. When people sign up for sites that are meant to promote personal expression and individuality, they're forced to censor themselves if they want to get or keep their job. Along with monitoring, employees go the extra mile and record what their employees are doing. Levinson states, when employees use employer-issued equipment to access electronic communications, those communications may then be stored on the employer's computer, server, or other equipment. So not only are employers' internet uses being constantly monitored, but they are also being stored and kept in case they are needed in the future. Now I'm all for productivity, but I do not believe that employees should be put under a constant microscope. A level of trust needs to be established between employer and employee, and that cannot happen if every move they make is being analyzed. So transparency is a way to establish that relationship. According to Cambridge Dictionary Online, transparency is when all business and financial activities are done in an open way without secrets. This helps people trust that the business is fair and honest, and trust often starts within the business itself. According to Don Tapscott and David Tickall, authors of The Naked Corporation, they build trust with employees through openness and ethical values. Transparency and values begin at home. The surest indicator of how a firm treats customers, shareholders, partners, and other stakeholders is how it treats employees. By beginning with employees, businesses are able to build on a foundation of trust, respect, and honesty. Communication allows for a better work environment and a better relationship between employer and the employed. Transparency between these two is vital for quality work also. If the employee knows the business objectives, they can do their job more effectively. Tapscott and Tilcall also explain, employees must share and use new knowledge, must be empowered to take responsibility for it, and must be self-motivated. Most firms need highly visible values, strategy, business practices, and operation for workers to collaborate and work effectively. So by promoting transparency, businesses can assure a mutually comfortable and productive work environment.
So as you all heard previously, the government and a lot of businesses use technology in different ways, and many times they do so with their own objectives or best interests in mind. But what about the general public? What about all of us, assuming that none of you are government officials or executives of large businesses? How does this issue of technology, privacy, or security affect us in everyday life? Now, a large aspect of this situation is mass monitoring. The evolution of technology has had countless benefits for everyone over the years and will likely to continue to do so. But with these products comes the increase of monitoring. Today, many devices all around us, like computers, smartphones, surveillance cameras, GPS systems, sensors, and many other things, track all of our activity. In an article for the New York Times, it was reported that in 2011, over 1.3 million federal, state, and local law enforcement data requests were made to cell phone companies for personal records and information regarding GPS data, text message content, and billing records. In many cities, there are also countless amounts of cameras, both seen and unseen, that take thousands of photos per minute of drivers, their license plates, and their location information. Information like this is stored for years without any consent of the citizens. In 2013, Edward Snowden, as Chris brought up, former CIA employee and contractor of the NSA, became famous for releasing hugely controversial classified documents. Among those documents, he exposed how the National Security Agency, or NSA, created a secret program called PRISM, which gives them direct access to the servers of Facebook, YouTube, Skype, Google, Apple, Yahoo, and many other companies. This program allows the government immediate access and the ability to monitor the data and information of millions of people. Almost constantly, all of us are being monitored and analyzed as potential security threats. To bring context to this issue, I'm going to talk about a recent and local situation that involves a major invasion of privacy. In 2012, without the knowledge of the residents, the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department sent a civilian aircraft over Compton. The incident was a test run of the aircraft made by a company called Persistent Surveillance Systems. The device can stay in the air for up to 6 hours and take wide area surveillance video. The aircraft is able to zoom in to get clearer pictures of citizens on the street and in cars. It can also store the video for later viewing. Sergeant Douglas Ikitani of the LA County Sheriff's Office admitted that the operation was kept under wraps specifically to avoid public opposition and controversy. Unfortunately for the Sheriff's Department, the news about being watched in their own neighborhood without their knowledge certainly did not sit well with the Compton residents. If the information about this operation was meant to stay out of the hands of the public, the natural next question becomes, how many surveillance aircrafts are being launched over other cities without our knowledge or consent? Another aspect of this concern is online interactions. Users of social media sites have decided to take part in the constant sharing of information online, and because of that, the thought that our privacy could be violated in these situations almost sounds contradictory. But in actuality, most if not all of the content we share online becomes the property of the particular site. In the terms and conditions of different social media sites that no one ever reads, it can be found that Twitter gives the user or a publisher intellectual ownership over what they produce, while Twitter claims the total right to use the content in any way that they want. Facebook also holds the same terms, but uniquely, the license over a user's content does not end when that user deletes their account. It only ends when all other users that they may have interacted with on Facebook have also deleted their accounts. So if you and others have shared a video on each other's page, or if you're tagged in a photo on somebody else's page, your content will still be in a contract with Facebook even if you've stopped using the site. Google and its many online services have a slightly less tight hold on a user's content. Their terms state that they will only use user content for the limiting purpose of operating, promoting, and improving our services and to develop new ones. In 2012, Instagram came under fire after they updated their terms and conditions to include their right to use and sell any user's photos without consent or compensation. They ultimately decided to scrap that rule before it came into effect because of the complaints from users. Another type of website that can also cause major breaches in privacy for the general public is the practice of online shopping, which requires users to entrust very sensitive information about their home address and credit card numbers. If people are not diligent in assuring the legitimacy and reliability of a site, they can very easily end up in an incident of identity theft, which is a tragic form of privacy invasion. In December of last year, USA Today News reported that computer hackers infiltrated Target's databases and stole the payment card numbers of at least 70 million shoppers. The privacy issue online is both controllable with the sites you choose to share content and uncontrollable because of the risk that a hacker may steal your information, regardless of the legitimacy of a site. The future of privacy. A large concern as technological advances continue is that mass monitoring and privacy invasions are already so prevalent in many aspects of life today. So what will that mean for the technology privacy in the future? What will stop the government from launching civilian aircrafts in every town in the US in the name of safety? What will stop social media sites from continuing to take ownership over our personal content? With the dependency on the internet and technology in our society, the future of technology monitoring is bound to grow to new heights. So in conclusion, to bring forth change, we the general public have a civic obligation to come forth with any of our concerns about the issue of privacy. You can do so by protesting, signing petitions, or writing local representatives about privacy, safety, and many other concerns. We ourselves have elected to draft a letter to local officials about the Compton issue. The results of doing so might only benefit in the long run, but in the short run, we also have the ability to monitor what it is that we do on social media, be mindful of privacy settings, and also be mindful of where we're storing our information and who we're giving the right to use our information.
Regarding businesses, they do set their own standards, which includes privacy and censorship. Acts and transparency can be utilized to create a positive and productive work environment.
So in terms of the government, to recap, we have to remember that privacy does not equal security. We also went over cybersecurity and the difficulty balancing transparency and protection of privacy due to insufficient resources. And we discussed the Patriot Act and the extreme measures of data collection, and the proposal for an international personal data privacy treaty. With all of this in mind, we came to the conclusion that when consumers voice concerns to government, it should push officials to change policies to improve privatization of information and security, which will force businesses to do the same, leaving no party unaffected. Okay, great.